Is he going to be known as infamous later on? I'm not quite sure.
Just because a person has a big reputation, it does not mean that he can't make mistakes.
There are other experts, though, who I think more purposefully make mistakes.
Anything easy to criticize somebody, to become a Monday morning quarterback.
This is decades later quarterbacking.
To me, he is someone who puts his name and reputation and his ego over truth and people's lives. And it's time. It's time for it to stop.
Who is Henry Lee?
Well, it's a good question, it's a hard question.
There are countless criminal cases where victims and their relatives can thank Dr. Henry Lee, like a triple homicide Lee helped solve, which took 3 generations of a Derby family in 1989.
He is incredibly gifted.
Retired state's attorney Mary Galvin saw Lee transform a tiny state crime lab in an old bathroom to a state-of-the-art facility Connecticut has today, along with standardized rape kits.
He's really the preeminent leader in forensic science.
Yet Lee's forensics have fallen under sharper scrutiny after Ricky Birch and Sean Henning's $25.2 million settlement with the state.
They were cleared of all charges in 2020 after a judge ruled that forensic scientist Dr. Henry Lee gave false testimony about blood stains on a towel.
There is more money than I need, but it's not a point of the money. It doesn't give me back the fact that I couldn't have kids.
That case was one of 700 wrongful convictions that the National Institute of Justice tasked John Morgan to study. Morgan determined Lee overstated the significance of his findings in the case.
Well, I don't see Dr. Lee as being that different from any other expert, in the sense that Dr. Lee, as well as myself or anybody else, can be subject to cognitive bias effects and get something wrong. We're human.
There have been studies that have shown that experts are biased in favor of whichever side has hired them, right? Very, very stark difference, right? And so you already have this allegiance to the party that hired you. And this is something that is below conscious level.
We asked him if he ever made a mistake, and he essentially said no.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, sure. Okay, fair enough.
Forensic scientists, how many forensic scientists even can stand up to defend the profession? We are a victim of this society. We become a victim scapegoat for so many cases.
In my view, it's better for us all to admit that we're human and that we can make mistakes.
Morgan is leading the charge for states to have forensic science advisory and oversight boards.
In my view, much of the work that Dr. Lee performed and that made him famous was not work that fell under the scope of a sound accreditation or quality assurance system.
What forensic science podcaster John Collins is driving at here is that most forensic science labs have some form of peer review of their findings. Lee insists his lab did.
Even the famous Dr. Henry Lee, someone's checking your work.
Yeah, I check other people's, they check me, I check them. Scientifically, we never make a mistake.
After 50 years in forensic science, Lee leaves behind a complex legacy. He's authored dozens of books, worked on thousands of cases, and inspired the next generation of forensic experts, people like Dr. James Gill, who spent a summer as an intern in the lab and eventually became our state's chief medical examiner.
Dr. Lee, one of his strengths is that he's got so much energy and so much enthusiasm that he's, I'm sure, brought thousands and thousands of people into the field of forensic sciences over the years.
Now, questions linger.
How does this set the state for future cases that Mr. Lee has testified on?
Lawmakers who approved Birch and Henning's $25 million settlement wonder about the impact on other cases he's touched.
Does this open the floodgates for every single possible trial that he's testified?
The state's the only one that's going to lose any money. The taxpayers of Connecticut. That's messed up.
Lee said his dream was to bring forensic science to the modern age, and he did, bringing justice to some.
I've had cases where he cleared defendants because he's a fact finder. He's a scientist. He goes after the facts. And I do not believe that he would ever intentionally lie.
While others say injustice.
So the idea that, you know, he's more important, he's the most important player in this whole thing, that the person's life or lives that are involved aren't the most important thing, or the truth. How about that? How about the truth? That the truth isn't the most important thing.
It's everybody that cares about me and Sean. They took their lives away too in a big way.
What is Dr. Henry Lee's legacy?
After 50 years in Connecticut, I did what I think are the best I can do to bring Connecticut to the 21st century in forensic work. Good, bad, judgment, history will prove. History will prove everything.